I already told that broker that I wasn't going to use them. So it was somebody we both knew,
Okay.
childhood friend of mine, or not, anyways. But do you think they would follow through on all this stuff just to close out the application?
Well, I would ask the loan officer, Emily, that you're working with. It's like, okay, you've looked at this. It makes it makes DSCR covenant with the current capital stack that we're coming to the table with. What type of liquidity requirements you need from me, because I don't have much less that I have to bring to the closing table. I just don't want to waste any more time on this deal, and that sort of thing. And if she's like, oh yeah, no, we're fine, like we're fine with this in light of the seller financing being brought to the table. We just need to see X amount, and then you can basically share that. So.
Well, so I said to her, well, I shared her my liquidity. I showed her more than what she asked for previously.
Mm-hmm.
Minus the 20%, of course, but I showed, I don't know, $280,000, and I don't think I need that much anyways. But my question to her is would underwriting keep asking for these things, on a secure email, blah blah blah, if the deal was dead and they didn't think it was going to work out? And she says, well, I don't really know. She says it could be they just want to, make sure they complete the application.
Okay.
Does that
Um.
make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes
Like,
sense. I mean, if she's aware of the details, I don't think that she would just like want to like go through the motions and have you like do the chicken dance just to move the goalposts on you again. So this sounds at least promising. It's kind of frustrating that she's not giving you answers on like, hey, if I'm showing this, is this going to be ready, or be good to move forward? So, um,
yeah, it's frustrating. She thought that my DSCR globally didn't make it, but when we crossed that bridge previously, then she moved on to the next step. So I'm not, and so these requests were coming for the underwriter today.
mhm.
So it doesn't seem like the underwriter would bother going any further if the DSCR didn't meet up. To me,
Yeah,
anyways, and she couldn't give me a straight answer. I was a little surprised at that. So that's why I was, dying to hear your answer because, it seems to me like they wouldn't waste my time or theirs if there wasn't a
yeah.
path forward.
Well, yeah, I mean, because they're using internal payroll to move this thing further. So if it's going to be dead on arrival, then why would they do that? But no, let's touch base tomorrow and
Yep.
talk through it. So,
Yeah. Thank
um,
you.
all right, excellent. Welcome everybody to Go Bigger Tuner Mastermind call. Tonight, I have a pretty packed agenda. I did want to introduce everybody to a new member of the crew, Mr. David Darnell. David, why don't you come on here, unmute yourself, and tell us a little bit about yourself and what your goals are.
Hi, David Darnell. I'm in the Cleveland, Ohio area, just southeast of there a bit. And I've been doing I have some single family and small multifamily rental properties and looking to scale up into larger properties and came across Matthew's group and trying to figure out the path to the success here.
Thanks, David. Welcome.
Thank you.
Um, okay, so everybody, there's going to be two things in the agenda tonight. Is number one is just some refresher on expanding your sphere of influence. For those of you who are new to here, obviously the first step in building your OPM infrastructure, OPM, your other people's money infrastructure to position yourself to raise capital is obviously canvassing your sphere of influence, because those are all the people that have a built-in know, like, and trust factor with you already. Okay, who's canvassed their entire sphere of influence here yet? I want to raise your hand. Like everybody knows exactly what you're doing, what you're focused on in your commercial real estate endeavors. Anyone raise their hand? Maybe Orlando. Okay. So after we canvass the sphere and everybody knows like exactly what we're doing on our path, and if some of this stuff sounds foreign to you all that I haven't onboarded yet, that's okay. We're going to go into the step by step. How do you expand your sphere of influence over time and curate new contacts? All right, because at some point in time, as you're scaling, you're going to tap out of the people that know, like, and trust you. All right. So you have to start making the investments now and planting those seeds that will turn into those trees in the future as it pertains to expanding your capacity to raise capital as you're scaling into, not just $2 to $3 million deals, but $4, $5, $8 million deals, and so on and so forth. So anybody got any ideas on ways to start curating new contacts and expanding their sphere in a strategic way? I know,
Um,
Carl. All right,
I would
yeah,
say,
go ahead,
I would
Eli.
say on my end, not that I've done a lot of it, expanding my sphere, but it's easier when you put it out there what you're doing. Social media wise, I know you're going through, you go into kind of putting yourself out there in this program. That's something that for me took me a while to get done. But after doing it, I got people asking me about it because they already see what I'm doing, what I'm showing that I'm into. So it's easier to kind of get through the initial, I guess convincing them of what I do because they already have seen me in the background, even if they're just stalking me around. So it makes it easier once you start talking about the numbers and the financing side.
Yeah, so I mean, you got Orlando. I'm going to keep you on the hook here for a little bit. So you got, that helps indoctrinate your sphere and remind it and keep top of mind as a subject matter expert in this particular vein. But what are some things you've done in the past to like make new relationships that you can kind of add into that pipeline?
Oh man, I would say networking is one. Trying to look at circles that I haven't really tapped into, or folks that I haven't connected with in a while. Um, that has helped me out quite a bit, or just touching base again with other people that may have done stuff with me in the past many years ago, just to kind of retouch base with them. That's been something that I've done.
Yeah, and Orlando, and finding like networking. All right, so how do you actually network? And then first and foremost, like how do I know where to look to network to build relationships or start to build relationships with new people? Because the important thing of this right now is that these people that you start building relationships with may not be capital partners on your next deal or even the next 2 to 3 deals after that, right? But as you're scaling into your fifth or sixth deal, years down the line, then you have these relationships built and the infrastructure out. So like, how do you start, like, from a networking perspective, find opportunities to get in front of new people and kind of like start to germinate and plant the seeds of those relationships?
Let me see. Yeah, I mean, I think like for myself is looking at the circles that I'm already part of, like different boards that I'm already kind of a part of, that you're developing these relationships with people that, you may not see at a real estate event or anywhere else like that. But, if I go to board meetings, I'm on 5, 6 different boards right now. And there's 20 people per board, right? So when I look at the folks that are on those boards, is adding them to my LinkedIn, adding them to Facebook, depending on the relationship. So for me is kind of bringing them in a subtle way to my social media sphere. So that when I do have those conversations with them, again, I'm not convincing them of what I'm doing, and they've already kind of seen it in the background through LinkedIn or whatever the case is. So that's something that I've been doing for maybe a year or so now, more intentionally. Um, so yeah. And then, I think and the other end, just a few weeks ago, we were talking to the Acorn team, and, we were looking at, we're in that refinance stage of Roseview, and we need some additional cash just to kind of get us through the finish line there. And just with one message, I got 75K from an investor, that a friend of mine's in New York City, that a year ago he was looking to buy something in New York City, but things change, and I hit him up just kind of randomly to touch base again, and he was like, "Yeah, it doesn't look like I'm buying anytime soon." So yeah, the 75K is available. So within a week we had 75K. But again, it's kind of keep in mind of what they've told me, a year ago, and you never know, things change, and it was the right time and the right amount of money, I guess, for us. And but if it wasn't like, I think it was a sense of urgency that we had at one of our meetings a couple of weeks ago, and I just kind of shot a message out, and it was the right time. So otherwise, I wouldn't have probably hit him up.
No, 100%. Yeah, nothing like having a gun against your head, right? So so there's a couple different things here, right? So and one of the things that I'm really, really adamant about is that all of you in this group are the super freaks of the world, right? What you've accomplished in terms of the portfolios you built is oftentimes less than 0.07% of Americans have built the types of portfolios you guys have. So the way I always go about, through my thought leadership platform, and whether this is through social media or through email, for instance, like Drew Kingsley is into emailing a sphere of influence in terms of like documenting what's going on his journey, is to get that question and prompt that question for, hey, Drew, can I pick your brain for a little bit? Like, I've been thinking about buying an investment property myself, right? And I've seen what you've been doing, and you posted that that thing about that boiler that caught on fire. I'm referencing Orlando's case in one of his properties, and it seems like a nightmare, but I really want to get into this. And the best way to do this in terms of a one-on-one is go about it in the way of like, hey, how can I help you do it yourself? Knowing full well that only 6% of Americans actually own one or more rental properties. All right. So 94% of the time, these people you have coffee with, have lunch with, have a beer with, have a Zoom call with, whatever, to try to help them on their own journey. And also, educating them on the types of tools they can pull on from a capital source, from a creative capital source, to be able to position themselves to land their own deals. Because what's going to happen is that they're not going to have the time to find deals. They're not going to have the confidence or experience to pull it off. And I've turned a lot of these people that have been from the standpoint of like, first off, wanting to do on their own into actual investment partners or private lenders on the deals that I have done, right? So, and there's that law of reciprocity. You poured into them and given them a lot of value and confidence that you're doing, and also at the same time raising their trust in you that, hey, this person knows what they've been doing. They're not just a highlight reel. They told me about like the ups and downs, the good, bad, and ugly, and also they told me about different resources I can pull on in terms of converting an old 401k to a self-directed IRA that I can use to passively invest in real estate deals. They've told me about home equity lines of credit, all these different things that are tools that I can do myself so that they can then be comfortable with that idea, right? So traditionally how I go about trying to expanding my sphere of influence is through networking is the most effective way of doing that, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be a real estate event that you have to go to, right? Real estate meetups, for instance, because I guarantee you there's probably, regardless of where you are in the country, there's a real estate meetup that's near where you are. You're typically going to find experienced real estate investors that are used to doing it on their own. Now, they're probably not going to be the best candidates to be a private money lender. We typically want to do these deals together so you can maximize keeping most, if not all, of the equity in the deals. But they're going to be more interested in actually being an equity partner, which is okay, right? We have to build those relationships because at some point in time, we may have a deal that comes across our desk that's like, that's might be 2 times the size that we had anticipated taking down, and we need to have a balance sheet partner to help to bring their balance sheet to the table to do that. So it doesn't have to be a real estate meetup. It could be anything, right? Anything that is of an interest to you. If you're passionate about a nonprofit cause, and you've kind of had passive involvement, getting involved with a committee, getting involved with helping them organize their next fundraiser or gala or whatever it is. It could be a special interest group or a trade association, a hobby group, even. All right. And what I definitely want to do when I get myself into one of these rooms is just make one new friend. All right. And typically, if I don't know anybody in that room, for instance, which is like where I've had like the most heightened level of social anxiety, I find the person that looks completely out of place there. It looks like they have the same amount of anxiety that I do. All right. And I'll just target that person and introduce myself to them, right? And just hit it off with them and have a best friends conversation, take an interest in them. The beautiful thing about this whole thing is that if you're putting yourself into new rooms and you're making one new friend each time, typically those people have a high probability of probably going back to those same rooms. So over time, you'll start to build this sort of constellation and have familiar faces. So there's not as much social anxiety behind it. Typically, the next step that I do when I find that person, take an interest in them. Just be genuinely curious. This is very, very kind of like, technical, but when I'm talking to that person, I don't want to be basically squared off with them face to face. I kind of want to be like oblique to them, right? Kind of like not standing beside them, but kind of standing like, somewhat towards them and somewhat away from them. From a brain science and social, just sociology type of stuff. I don't know what to call it. When you're squared off with somebody, it's very difficult for them to actually kind of like break away from you, right? So so they don't want to feel trapped, like they have to talk to you, right? Because sometimes people really want to, maybe make a friend, but also circulate. Also, what this does as well is that it allows from your body language facing out like this, talking to them like this, is that this also allows them, allows other people maybe going there and want to make new friends kind of join you. Because if you're squared off with each other, it's very socially awkward for somebody to go in and like introduce themselves, right? So it allows you to kind of open yourself up to make additional connections. And then as you learn about this one-on-one person you've been talking to, and and take an interest in them and building that rapport really quickly, I've made connections like right there in terms of introducing this person to that other person, and kind of giving a little bit about their background and that sort of thing, which also, in terms of law of reciprocity does that. And what I always do, and this is a rule for myself, is that I know people want to circulate, and I just want to book a one-on-one from that networking meeting, right? Whether it's coffee, lunch, dinner, drinks, whatever you have the capacity for, and whipping out my phone, pulling up the calendar, booking in a time right then and there with them. And even if it's far out in the future, hey, let's just book a time here. What's your number? What's your number? What's your link? What's your link there? Where are you active on social so we can stay connected? So then I can touch base with you the week of and confirm our date, right? Because that many to the one, and that one-to-one belly to belly, face to face, without any distractions, is where you can build the most amount of value to that person to build that relationship, and then kind of rinse and repeat that over time. So that's how I expand my sphere of influence, and I'm always doing it because the last capital raise that I had, where I had to raise $750,000, was an absolute scramble. To be honest with you, I was lazy on expanding my sphere of influence over time. I was going back to the same people because I thought I was the shit, and I had it all figured out from a capital raising standpoint. Well, this deal had some hair on it, had a lot of uncertainty on it, and my typical investors that just wanted a straight up just low risk. Low risk, like stabilized value add deal. None of them even wanted to participate in it, even though I had, paid them hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash over time and borrowed millions of dollars from them. So anyways, any questions or ideas or additional ideas on networking and expanding your sphere of influence that anybody has that we haven't really talked about? Well, D. Harris, I want to talk to you for a second because one of the things is that I know there's a lot of people that out here that are reluctant to using social media as a tool to keeping their network indoctrinated with what you do as a subject matter expert. D, you've been active on social media with your brokerage business for quite some time. So I guess tell us about the first time you actually posted on social media about real estate, and I don't know, did it come easy to you or was it really difficult?
Um, I mean, it was not easy. So I've been on a team for a long time, really about 8 months ago when I decided to split up and just kind of be on my own as a broker team. I knew that that was something I had to do, and there was no choice. And then But what's interesting is social media is the feedback is there, and then you have to figure out what area your focus is. And I'm from Ethiopia, and I'm American. I grew up here, but I also serve my community here in the DC area. So I knew that I could explain things better than most in our language, and that has been TikTok. I've been on TikTok, I think, and you've been kind enough to participate in a couple of my lives here. Um, Facebook and Instagram. Instagram somehow doesn't connect with me, but TikTok has taken off. It was not easy, but you have to do it. I think the world we live in looks for that, and also you know, now even when people search for you, it's there. That so all that AI people, all the AI engines look for anything and everything you do in all the platforms. So it's been good, and at first it was difficult, but it's been really rewarding. You see the feedback, so hopefully that helps. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And what was kind of difficult for you to start doing it? Like what were kind of like the blocks in your like the blocks in your mind and
The
the
block, you're
question?
like you didn't want to see yourself in the video, right? And then, or would I look good, or um would I say something incorrectly? But really at the end of the day, people don't care about that. People look for your content to see what you're producing, and if you're producing it consistently, I always put out a professionally, like I have on a daily basis, I post something somewhere, whether it's a quote, but there's something that I'm outputting every day. I have a very kind of schedule I follow. Once a week, I do a video that I do on my own, but I also do once a week a recorded video, professionally recorded video I put out. Um, and then once you realize people actually like the content, and sometimes you may not be perfect, now it's very quick. I whip out the phone. I'm going live. Yesterday, I had to go live. I forgot that I did not announce it. Got out of my car, took 2 minutes, recorded it, posted it, kept moving. You know, so you have to get over your head, though. That's the challenge.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, and then one thing too is that I was always like, oh, I had to have this like something like super polished and edited and all that sort of thing. And then I realized that on the consumption rate, that's like what like how many seconds somebody's actually viewing these things. And I'm a fan of video because I think that from a relationship and trust building standpoint, it's just like, hearing your voice and your face move and all that sort of thing is just a lot more enhanced for trust building. And I was like, geez, people are only seeing this for like 5 seconds on average. Like, what is the
Yeah.
point? Like, what is the point of this? And when I realized that, and also not getting any likes, comments, shares, like whatsoever. And when I found out, but I'd meet people out at industry meetups and that sort of thing, our local commercial board of realtors. And then like these people that I'd meet, even for the first time, where people I haven't seen in a while, would recite back to me like what I've been doing in my real estate business over the past like 6 months. I'm like, fool, you never even like commented or liked or anything that I've ever done. And that's not the thing. And the thing is, even if it's a scroll by, they stop for 2 seconds and don't even want to, see what you have to post, whether it's a boiler on fire or whether it's exploding pipes and that sort of thing, or just talking about some sort of concept and you're doing a selfie video or a tour of a space you're renovating, or the importance of shutting off your hose bibs on your rental properties before winter hits, or whatever it is. It's just the fact that they're seeing that there and your identity is becoming synonymous with whoever your name is. They're in real estate and they're good at it, right? So you get that identity there, and I don't give a crap about consumption rates or anything like that. So, but D, anything else to add to what I just
What's
found?
interesting is I did one video about all of us are in multifamily investment here on the bigger side, but on the residential side, I do a lot of 3, 4 units, and I did a very simple video about how you buy it and posted it in my community in Amharic. We speak in Amharic, and without me knowing it just kind of blew up. And I only have 4 or 5 thousand followers on TikTok, and it had a whole over 100,000 views in a matter of a week. So that surprised me. But I'm just saying, it's just the content I just posted. So just don't be afraid. Just go do out there, do it, and people get used to you being out there. So thanks for letting me talk.
Thanks, D. Before we move on to some creative deal finance topic that I have prepared for tonight, any other ideas you guys want to bring to the table as to, like, I don't know, how to get over the social anxiety with networking, special tricks that work for you, that that you employ tactically, and all that good stuff. Okay, all right. So, the next thing I want to cover tonight too is there was a deal that some of you guys brought to me that looked really particularly interesting. At first, like I kind of like almost blew it off. It's a mixed use deal, office and also first floor retail. Okay, and when I first looked at it, I was like, oh my gosh, the largest lease is expiring in 3 years, and there's a lot of value that that's being put into this equation in terms of the pricing guidance of the property. That if this tenant left, then you'd be saddled with millions of dollars with a bank debt that you personally guaranteed, and you'd be like in the poorhouse, like lose your house and all that sort of thing, right? So I wanted to my philosophy, so I almost wrote it off as like, this deal's too risky. But then I had to remind myself of one of my mantras that I learned from one of my mentors, which is like always work to the maybe. Okay, because a lot of people just want to categorize things of like it's a deal or it's not a deal. Okay, well, what can be done to work to the maybe of being a deal, right? Even through thinking, really boldly and really creatively through the process. So I decided to take another look at this deal, and share with you my thoughts on how to creatively structure it. And all this is going to make a lot more sense when you actually see my screen here. So I'm going to share this. Okay, here we go. So first off, I'm gonna go with the rent roll. Guys, this is not anything from the Epstein files. This is something I redacted on purpose because I don't want to give like the deal, the deal details away. But this is what your standard rent roll on a broker's offer memorandum will look like. Okay, and generally with commercial, not necessarily residential, is they'll have the square footage of each of the tenant spaces, and then the lease commencement date when they originally moved in, so you can know how long the tenant's been there, which is good because usually when a tenant stays, they have a higher probability of staying even longer. This is kind of a stickiness factor that's on here. Obviously, the lease expiration date, and the rent per square foot, and the style of the leases, and all that sort of thing. All right. So, can anybody here tell me what the biggest risk on this deal is? Without seeing anything else.
20,000 square feet.
Yep.
This tenant right there, 350,000 once they out. Too much of a risk.
Absolutely, Maxim. Right, and they're rolling off in it's rolling off in about 3 years. Okay, they do have one 5-year renewal, which as we go through, and believe me, all of you are not going to retain all this stuff, so don't worry about it. This will come into play when you and I are actually diving into these deals and underwriting them together. So I can use it as like a teachable moment for you to kind of start internalizing all this stuff. All right, so you have all of this exposure and this one tenant that's rolling off in a few years. And after talking to the broker, also, this is a particular tenant. It's a very, very large institution. But they typically take forever, and also sometimes beyond the lease expiration to even talk about renewing their lease. All right, so this is a deal that according to the broker could be bought at a 10 cap or 10 capitalization rate, which would be a monster cash flow deal, and once appraised on a stabilized basis would probably be an 8.5% cap rate. So you'd have a pretty decent spread on this deal day one. But this is the biggest factor. This is the biggest factor here, right? Because they have let's say a 90% chance of renewing their lease. That 10% is still, because of the asymmetric nature of how much square footage is allocated to this tenant, and you're using bank debt. In this case, at a 10 cap, this is like a $4.1 million deal, and you're going to have $3 million in bank debt that is virtually guaranteed by you. So if there's that 10% chance this tenant moves out, then you're gonna be screwed. You're not gonna be able to make the monthly payment. You're not gonna be able to make the monthly payments, and you're gonna be, like I said, going to the poorhouse and losing everything, including your house. Okay, so how do we structure this deal or propose a creative deal structure in a way where we can offload that non-renewal risk to seller, all right, and kind of share in the risk a little bit while minimizing the amount of investment capital we have to bring to the table. So in the event that this tenant didn't renew, that we have as minimal amount of risk capital out there as possible. All right. So this is the financial summary in terms of the couple years of historical income and expenses here. So I'm not going to go into granular detail on this, but this is just something so we can reference, and and this is where I actually pulled the not me, one of you guys actually did the underwriting on this deal, and actually did a great job. So yeah, I can't take credit for it. So all right, so let's go over here in terms of the Go Bigger Sooner analysis spreadsheet. Okay, all right. So this is how we're working on essentially de-risking this lease roll-off from this major tenant. Okay, and I put some notes down here along the right hand side, just so you can kind of explain as to like what my thinking is around this. All right, so the actual retail spaces, I like the fact that they're staggered in terms of lease expiration, and there's some that have been there for quite some time. It's in a really, really great location with parking. So and the leases are staggered in terms of expiration, so you don't have all of the leases expiring in 1 year, for instance. So I like that. So anyways, what I do is I take the rent income. This is triple net lease income. So whatever the base rent is the net operating income for the property. And so I took that. I was like, okay, I'll value that space at an 8.5% cap rate because that's what appraisers are coming at. So I basically took that 114,000. And actually, I'm just gonna do a wild screen share here so I can toggle back and forth. So you can kind of see what I'm doing here. So what I did on this was, I just basically took whatever was on the rent roll here in terms of the annual on these other tenants, and then I just add that up, and that became the net operating income for that particular piece of the whole thing, right? So we got $1.3 million in value from that. All right, and then what I did is I took the remaining economic value on the current lease rent that's in place is going to be due by that big tenant, all right, and added that onto there, right? So we're starting to build up like a what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to work up to what my maximum allowable bank financing is going to be on the property to manage my risks in the event that this larger tenant moved out. And the methodology is if we had to pivot and either reposition or redevelop the property, it would be at a basis with a debt load that's low enough that would make it manageable for us. All right. So then what I did here is if that space went vacant, for instance, that space, the really, really large space, typically the way that I'm looking at this is I want to have a cost basis that's low enough on that space to be able to have a residential conversion. So from the office to residential, and typically in the Northeast, in the Northeast and Midwest, generally you'd have to buy a vacant building, for instance, at between $20 and $30 a square foot in order for a residential redevelopment to take place. Okay, so I factored in at $25 per square foot for the vacant space. So that builds us up to a total of $2.728 million. Okay, and maximum bank financing we want to have on this deal to manage our downside risk. And so I plugged it in there. I know that a lot of you have been getting term sheets that are around 6.5% interest on a 25-year AM. And so and what is this here? Okay, so we got our bank debt up there. So what we're going to do is essentially propose that, hey, this is the amount of cash we're going to be able to bring to the table here via bank financing in our own cash or investors' cash, and then we need to to share in the risk of this tenant going vacant with us. And how we're going to do that is by customizing some seller financing that's secondary, subordinated to the bank financing. And these are the terms that I work to on this. And the way that the mortgage documents of the seller second would work is in the event that this major tenant moved out, okay, or moved out, that then that $1.2 million in seller secondary financing would basically just burn off and be forgiven. All right. Now this may sound like crazy stuff here, but the most, and this goes not only for me, but all of the people that are in the group, is that sometimes those bold requests that you make that are almost embarrassing, or maybe just crazy and off the wall, are some of the best deals I've made in my life, right? So that's how we would customize that financing. And obviously, if this major tenant ended up renewing, then what we do is then we bring the deal to the bank, refinance the property, and then be guaranteed to have enough equity spread at the back end, which we'll go into in the before tax cash flow down here. And the other reason why I also customized to this level here is also on this debt coverage ratio. This is, by the way, guys, this is like the maximum allowable offer, right? So we're going to want to do something that's a little bit less generous to this, that in the event that the actual seller countered back, then we'd have some room to go up and maybe sweeten some terms for the seller. So this right now is like maximum allowable offer. Obviously, if we offered 8% interest only to the seller, then our debt coverage ratio would be 1.25. And obviously, the higher the debt coverage ratio, the more banks will be interested in it. And typically banks have a floor in terms of their debt service coverage ratio of 1.2, sometimes 1.25. So that's why I picked that 9% interest rate, because that just got it right to the 1.2 DSCR. Before I move on, I want to see if there's any questions pertaining to what I'm talking about here. If you do have anything that comes to mind, please interrupt. Please interrupt me.
So that the 1,250,000 there, that is got held by the seller, correct?
The seller subordinated to the bank's financing. So in second position to the bank's financing.
Okay.
Okay. And obviously you can go up on the loan amount, you can go down to the interest rate. I would probably, pull on both of those levers to give yourself a little bit of room in the event that the owner, counters back, because the whole story with this deal is that these people need to sell. They're looking to allocate all of their the real estate business activity into multifamily residential. So they are like your quintessential motivated seller, right? Okay, so the advantage here is obviously between the down payment and closing costs is you could get into a $4 million deal potentially with $171,000 out of pocket, right? Now, if you were to lock this deal up, one of the things that I work with you on is getting banks interested in this. Sometimes there's going to be most of the community banks, when they see what the total leverage on it, including the bank's financing in the second, and also the one thing that's great about this is that when a bank looks at it, I'm going to zero this out. You look at the loan to value ratio is really conservative, below 70%. So that's going to make also a bank, interested too, because they have like an optimal, a really chunky equity position in the event they had to take the property, right? So some banks may not be okay with this little skin in the game. But when we're optimizing for a really low proposed effective loan to value ratio on it, then you can get a lot more banks that are interested in it. So just be aware when you're creatively financing deals like this that sometimes banks are going to want to see more skin in the game from a down payment standpoint. But every bank is different. So if one says, "Hey, typically we're at 20% down, but a seller financing will go as low as 5% or 10% or whatever that may be." A lot of times I've seen a lot of banks that have been comfortable with 10% equity from the borrower coming into the deal. To the guys that brought this to me, we can talk offline on some other creative strategies and levers to pull, and seeing if there's multiple tax parcels that are involved in a package of this deal, and kind of doing some like you know, a little bit of pulling levers in terms of allocating value to bring your down payment down to if nothing. Okay. All right. So now we're going to take a look at this so you can actually see when this actually has the equity, you know, the equity spread, creates the equity spread that we need, right? So that being said, with this, I have this modeled out based upon 2% annual increases. One of the things we have to verify with the actual broker is what is the schedule of values in the tenant's lease. These aren't yearly leases where, you know, you can just increase like residential, or you can just increase them 3, 5, 10% or whatever. It's going to be dependent on the lease as to how often and by how much those rent bumps take place, right? So this 2% here is just an assumption. We're working with the broker to get that to get those numbers back to us so we can actually like model this out by year basis on those leases, right? And also understanding with those properties that have the renewal options, sometimes those renewal options are already pre-negotiated. Okay. And so that's very easy to basically plug in there. It's like, okay, well, if this guy renews and exercises 5-year renewal, then we know it's going to go up to X amount, right? So, all right. So now we're going to go over to the before tax cash flow spreadsheet here. All right. So this NOI is how it's modeled to increase over that period. And also with the large tenant, they do have a 5-year option that's built in there to exercise. And so calculate that in there to see if we can actually have enough equity pop on the back end, right? So when we modeled this out here, now it doesn't make it in less than 5 years like we typically want to see, but in year 6, for instance, we have enough equity spread here to basically this property will be worth $5.2 million in year 6. We have the amortized down loan balance primarily due to the bank debt because we're going to have some seller financing this deal that is not amortized down. And we're going to see what that loan balance is and what our cash out potential is. And this is essentially 75% of whatever the projected value is, subtracting out the loan balance, right? And that gives us the cash out potential. This also follows the loan to amortization, the loan to balance as well. So that's what we need to get down to that, and it might take 6 years as opposed to 5, but we still have to understand like what we go through and actually find out what those rent schedules are from the broker. So this to me would be a good deal at 4.1 with those proposed terms on there, while managing the risk down for that potential vacancy exposure. Any questions or concerns about this, or questions about my methodology and thinking behind this? Okay, so how we would go to, especially with when we're proposing seller finance deals, is I kind of want to add up the entire economic value to present them either in the body of the email that I'm going to send with the letter of intent to the broker, or actually even built into the letter of intent itself, spelling out the actual total economic value, right? Because after we go into the amount of interest that's paid over 3 years for instance, okay, because we're anticipating that once we get this lease renewal that we're going to refinance the property and take you out. The down payment in cash to the seller, obviously I've taken this and I've just subtracted the acquisition expenses out of there as well. The bank cash, right? So this person, the seller, is going to get $2.7 million in cash at closing, right? In addition to the down payment. So after we've had this, we have like $2.8 million in cash to seller at the closing, and then the total cash to the seller over the deal life, as we've gone in and refinanced the property and also paid the remaining the remainder of the installment sale back. It's kind of like, this isn't really a $4.1 million deal. This is like a $4.5 million deal, right? And this is how we're getting to that. And also, plus, if this person, if this ownership group does have if they bought the property pretty cheap or have a low basis on it, and they have a capital gain liability on this, then this loan amount that they could do could essentially be they can defer a portion of their capital gain, right? They'll have to pay some of it based upon what they're getting at closing. The most advantageous way for seller financing is for the seller to take as little money down as possible and be as interest only for as long as possible, right? And then what we have also is and when I propose the seller financing as well with you guys, the interest they earn over the period, even though they have they'll pay ordinary income tax on the interest income, the net interest income to them that they earn over this, let's say, 5-year period or 3-year period, that sort of thing, will help them actually cancel out the capital gains tax they have on it, right? So let's assume 20%. So unless they have like no basis left in the property and they've completely depreciated it, or they used cost segregation study, that sort of thing. So, any questions? Any ideas on this? Was it helpful at all?
I have a question on that. You kind of burned over it pretty quick, but you said in the condition where that you have a condition there, if that tenant doesn't renew, the large tenant, that seller loan kind of burns away. Tell me what that means.
So it means that you can customize anything in the loan documents with a private mortgage, right? So you can build conditions in there that are advantageous to you, or conditions that are advantageous to the mortgage holder or the former owner of the property. And that is like the sky is the limit in terms of what conditions you can have in there. So you can have the whole note and mortgage, if in the event that this big tenant leaves after that, that lease period, obviously we don't want them to be on the hook for forever. But if they end up leaving, then that mortgage essentially gets forgiven, right? So then what we're left with in terms of the debt stack and the property is this 2.7 million, not 3 million and change.
Yeah. Okay.
And David, and I know I burned through it. Timmy, I'm not expecting you all to remember all of this stuff or anything like that. Not even like a chunk of it. But if there's some way, my whole objective with going through these things is to kind of get the creative juices flowing, is to like, hey, how can I work to the maybe on a deal? By thinking creatively. And you don't have to think creatively on your own either. I can, that's my job, is to work one-on-one through this with you to identify the risks, quantify those risks, manage those risks, and also, all right, well, how do we have this thing make money? No, but David, great question though. And do you have a follow-up?
No, that's what it sounded like, and I was curious if that's something you would actually put into an agreement, but
have I ever done it before? No. But I do know that there is for instance, there's a lot of like with subsidized housing projects, there's what's called soft loans. So, and they just essentially just expire after a certain amount of time. So you can definitely do this. Like I said, it may go nowhere, right? But you may not even get a response to it. The broker in this deal is like looking for any offer. Like, so they're like, I'm getting a lot of pressure from the owner to get this thing gone and get this thing moved. So you're helping the broker, and also you're by being a person that makes offers. Brokers love to work with buyers that make offers. We hate to work with buyers that just see a lot of properties and make no offer, despite every deal they bring to them is completely within their buy box. This was my frustration when I was a commercial real estate broker, and also a residential one before that.
Got it. So if nothing else, it's a kind of a conversation starter to see what they're open to.
Yeah, absolutely. And the key to getting offers accepted is to make more offers, right? And I know a lot of us can get in our heads is like, how can I possibly even do this? Do this deal that you never know what'll happen when you make a bold request. So, any other questions that what I covered at all? Okay. All right. So
actually, one real quick. So when you write, say you were going to write this up in an LOI, would you, all the notes you put on the side, would you break that down for them just so they kind of understood where you were coming from?
Yeah, whatever context you can bring in terms of reason, right? That we need to structure this way for us to be comfortable with it, and then additional bullet points on the additional benefits, right? Because a lot of people don't they don't see the number, right, in terms of the amount of interest income that they'll earn over that period. Add it all up. A lot of people just think, well, 9%, this does not do it for me. But if they actually see the nominal amount of $350,000 that's paid to them, and by the way, it helps us defer capital gains tax, and believe me, your offer, your LOI, don't be afraid to be as contextual as possible, and don't be afraid that it's just going to be, oh my gosh, it's going to be more than one page, or it's going to be 2.5 pages, right? The owner and the broker aren't looking at this like some mundane email that a coworker sends you, right? That hey, you can just give me the bullet points and be as brief as possible. This is something that is a big, huge transaction, right? And they want to be contemplative and careful about it before they respond, right? So don't be afraid. Oh, do I have to edit this like one of Matt's TikTok videos or something like that? You know what I mean? So it's okay to build that context in the LOI. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Any other questions about this deal? Okay. So I want to go around the horn right now, and oh, you know what? Zach, Noack. I didn't see you. I know, Zach, you came to our last in-person one there. So if you want to unmute yourself, and maybe we can see your face, can we?
I tried earlier. I don't know what's going on with Zoom, but it's not working out for me. So hopefully y'all can remember me from the meetup. But Zach Novak, nice to meet you guys. Joined a couple months ago, so still definitely a neophyte here. I'm based in Farmington, New York. I've been lightly involved in real estate for about 10 years now. I bought a 2-family that I rehabbed in Cornhill a while ago, and then got sidetracked with other things in life. So then contemplating and talked to Matt here, I think 4 years ago now, 3-4 years ago, to take the leap here in January. Looking to go bigger, obviously, like everybody else here. Trying to get more into larger multifamily residential, I think, is my goal. Still going through the baby steps, I think. Just at the asset pantry, and I know we do small wins, I guess, but small win. I just got a HELOC, which I told Matt about, on my primary residence to open up some liquidity. Just closed on that today, actually, with Matt's contact. So going through the process.
No, that's good. That's a huge win, man. And then Zach, one thing I wanted to ask you as well is that there's one of the high equity properties you have. I made some recommendations on leveraging your high equity and that to help liquefy your balance sheet. So you had a question about the different structures and loan terms, Esther. Do you want to share the group what that question was?
Sure. Yeah, I don't know what I don't know. So one of the maybe it's a dumb question, maybe it's not. I don't know. But I've got a decent rate on it right now. It's not terrible. It's like maybe 4.25, which is not bad for our, I'll say an investment loan. One of the things that I struggled on when I did that initial refinance, which it was a BRRR deal. I cashed out, paid back my loan on that for my parents, bless their heart. And I had to fight with that appraisal. It's a big, it's a pretty good sized property. It's, like 5,000 square feet, 2-family, side by side in Cornhill. There weren't any really good comps, so I had to fight really hard to get that appraised value up. And if I look at, through like a DSCR kind of appraisal on it, it's much higher than what like a comp would suggest, just based on square footage, just because there's not a lot of good comps. So I wasn't sure, and I did a little bit of research on it, and I found some folks that would do like a second position, like a DSCR second position HELOC. I don't know if that's like a hybrid option or something like that that's out there, but I'm just trying to find the best way to get the most liquidity out of that. I'm not sure if anybody else out there has run into that same issue or not, or knows of a product that's out there that'll do that. I can certainly do a DSCR on the whole thing. I know those are 6.5, 7 maybe on the whole thing, but if there's a way to access the rest of the equity on it without having to do that with something that's in a second position, I'm all ears.
Yeah, Zach, there's actually a few things you mentioned here that are really good to pull threads on here. So one, the psychological effects of there's some some guys and the girls in the group that had 2.5% interest rate mortgages on their properties, and I said, starve the ponies, feed the stallions, gut the pigs, right?
Yeah.
And so there's a psychological thing there. Okay, so there's a couple different methods to access equity without retiring some advantageous interest rate debt. And I always if there's a way to do it, yeah, let's explore that. So there's a couple different pathways. There's very little mortgage companies or mortgage originators, that sort of thing, will do a second position mortgage, whether it's an actual term loan or a line of credit on an investment property. Right, primary residences, credit unions will do a second position HELOCs all day long, or home equity line of credit. But second position on an investment property, they're like very, very few and far between. So there is that pathway. I've always leveraged relationships with community banks. So I haven't gone in that direction. So, and also I haven't really trusted any of these DSCR lenders that offer these types of exotic products as far as I can throw them, because I know that they are, a lot of them are application farms. These companies are propped up by private equity companies that are in private credit. There's been a lot of froth in private credit. So I just don't trust it, right? But if you have an actual reference, and even posting in your local real estate investors Facebook group and saying, hey, this is the situation I got. I have a decent interest rate on my property, and I really don't want to give it up. I'm wondering if any of you have gotten any or used any lenders that do a second position line of credit, right? So there's an additional thing here, lines of credit. They're very, very tempting. I wouldn't suggest you put a second mortgage in your house to get cash out in terms of a term loan. So lines of credit, I'd say, is a great tool in the tool belt to one, add to the bank's comfort in terms of liquidity of your own balance sheet. But lines of credit on investment properties, the reason why I hate lines of credit is because and why some banks will push you to do it, is that they're the ultimate flexibility for the bank, right? And they can call in open balances on lines of credit with pretty short notice, and then also they can just slash the line of credit like apropos of nothing. If they get an audit from the regulatory agencies that determine that their balance sheet is too risky, the first lowest hanging fruit is just cutting all your lines of credit. Okay. This is what happened to me. I had a line of credit of $75,000 that I think it was 75,000 that I was planning on using to fund down payment on my next investment property. And then lo and behold, the Lehman Brothers collapsed, and I got a little love letter in the mail from my bank saying, "Hey, I'm sorry, we got to cut your line of credit by like 75%." You know, so that's the reason why, Zach, why I don't like lines of credit. So that's why I prefer get the cash. I got the cash. You can't call the cash in and go before terms are up on the deal. That's like, but I'm cagey about that, and I'm also a geriatric millennial that lived through the great financial crisis as a real estate agent. So I have some trauma and scars I left behind with that. Now I texted you earlier, Zach, about the current bank that has the financing of the deal, and he said it was a local community bank. That being said, community banks that have the portfolio loans, assuming they're holding loans, they'll do a second mortgage on the property behind their first, right? Because they're in first position.
Okay.
The reason why a lot of banks and private lenders hard money lenders don't want to be in second position is that first the first mortgage has to foreclose, right? And then if it goes to auction and nobody bids on the property, and then the bank buys the property back, that junior lien holder gets wiped out completely.
Right.
But if they had the first, then they have the right, they have more security interest on it. So that's one thing I would look into to
That's
see
a
if they
good
can.
suggestion. Yeah.
And then if you're in a local real estate investors Facebook group, like drop a note in there. I guarantee you're going to get some responses. Actually, that's how I connected Zach to his home equity line of credit first. Bank that he just closed on, was just by doing that. I was like, damn, I don't know who's going up to 100% loan to value right now. But yeah, any follow-up questions to that, Zach?
No, I think that's good guidance. I like the war stories or the scars. I guess that's new news to me for somebody that didn't live through the Lehman Brothers crisis. Something to think about for sure. Makes a lot of sense with approaching the current credit union for a second position on the equity that's still there, right? So, and you gave me some comps too, so I think that's probably going to be my next step.
Yeah, absolutely. And also being armed with the comps as well. And then here's another thing too that applies to everybody, especially on appraisals for refinances. Number one, banks can no longer choose their appraisers anymore, either for residential or commercial. So if you're refinancing a residential property or a commercial property, they cannot choose the appraisers anymore. So they have a couple different options, and this is how a lot of residential companies do it. Is that they have a appraisal management company that will basically send a notification to all the appraisers on the distribution list, and with basically a call for bids with the address of the property and that sort of thing. Generally, they're going to optimize for the lowest cost appraisal. So the most hungriest appraiser, right? And generally speaking, there's always a high probability that there's somebody that lives out in the sticks, or not even in your market, that is that is a licensed appraiser, but they don't operate a lot in your market, right? And a lot of us that live in secondary and tertiary markets, especially like metro areas, like if you own properties in a city or a high density suburb, all of us know that like it's street by street, block by block in terms of valuations, right?
Mm-hmm.
Down the street from my house, like I think I can walk there probably in 3 minutes. The values of the houses go down by 50%, right? An out of town appraiser is not going to have that familiarity with it, so they're going to essentially especially this is a very, very small little pocket neighborhood. Zach, you had this property. So it's very easy to go, I mean, we talked about this 2 blocks in one direction and
Yeah.
it's completely, it's a
Yeah.
completely different
Ford Street's not that far away, right? From Cornell. So
Yeah.
that's true.
So one of the things is that if you get a called by an appraiser and it's an area code that's not your own, and it's not an appraiser that you're familiar with, and you find out that they are an out of town appraiser, I say, hey, listen, let me call my loan officer, and I'll get back in touch with you. Okay. So
Okay.
then what I'll do is I'll contact the loan officer and say, okay, this guy's out of this guy's out of Buffalo. This is this is the city, all right, which is like you got to have a very, very like thorough understanding experience to know how the neighborhoods are like overlay with each other. So I've done this in the past, and what they did is they just told that appraiser to reject the order, and then we got another appraiser, right? So definitely be conscious of that. Don't be lazy about that either. So if you get somebody who's out of Syracuse or Buffalo or Ithaca, make sure you voice your concerns to the loan officer, and then also ideally at the appraisal, to say, hey, listen, my realtor sent some comps over to me. This is a very, very small neighborhood, so it might be difficult to find comps of comparable size. So here you go.
At what point in the process would you send that over? Is that like after you get the initial appraisal report, or is that after I contact the loan officer, or what does that look like?
So generally, the appraiser is going to call you to set up an appointment to walk through the property. All right.
Okay. Got it.
That's at the point in time we have initial contact with the appraiser, or they may email you. Right. And if you see their office address is an out of town address, like just call your loan officer immediately.
Got it.
So, and then and then the comps, right? You probably have a relationship with the realtor. Hey, I'm going for refi. Could you pull some comps, for me that show me price per square foot, when the property sold, and all those details and that sort of thing. And a realtor send it over to you right?
Yep. Yeah. That was my battle on the last go around. They were grabbing comps from, like you said, 3-minute full walk down the road that were in a different zip code.
Yeah, no, I know. And here's the other thing too. When do you give these comps to them? I'm typically have to meet the appraiser that'll let them in, so I give them to the appraiser at that point in time, right? Or even via email. You do not want to send them comps after they've done the appraisal and issued the appraisal report. Okay.
Yeah.
if the appraisal comes in low, then the loan officer will say, well, do you have some comps that can prove that maybe that we can get the appraiser to change the price. You're dealing with somebody who's a licensed professional off the very experienced. Like, do you really think that is going to be a winning battle with them?
Right. Yeah. Little too late. That was what I did the last go around, and I think I got it raised by 5% despite having a lot of evidence to the contrary. So that makes a ton of sense. Once it's out there, it's out there, right? So.
Oh, 100%. And this guy could be 5%. It's not going to be like, oh, I was $100,000 off.
Yeah,
oh my gosh. I'm like, yeah, I'll give him 5. I'll give him 5%. I'll give him
25% wrong at my job. Yeah, that's tough.
So
I had an appraisal problem on my last one. It was over $100,000 low.
Oh, geez, that's like freaking heartbreaking.
I ended up switching the loan. I know the loan officer pretty well. He sent me to another commercial loan. They got a new appraisal, and the new one was so much different. The old loan officer got me a refund from the original appraisal.
Oh, we gotta know that loan officer, David. All right, before we close up tonight, any recent wins that y'all have, big or small? I do not like it. It does not matter. You know how small counts. Oh, Dim Taylor, did you get a updated LOI out on that deal we looked at?
I'm sitting here crunching numbers, working on that right now. So we're still getting a few details to get figured out, but I think in the next 48 hours we'll get it. So I finished laying the LVP and the single family this morning. We got a lease signed on it yesterday. We got a security deposit, so that's a win.
Nice. Are you ever gonna post about your real estate journey on social media or what?
One of these days, maybe.
Get your lovely wife to do it for Christ.
Yeah. I did buy a pair of Meta glasses because I did want to start messing around with it a little bit.
Nice. Any other recent wins, everybody? I know there's some in here, but I know we're a little bit over on time, so I don't want to pull teeth like I normally do.
Well, we walked this afternoon. We walked 3 buildings that were on separate parcels, but right next to each other.
Sweet. What'd you think?
They have some potential. They've got some potential. We're waiting for financials from the broker, which we should have hopefully in the next, I don't know, 3-4 days. So, but yeah, they were definitely interesting. Another medical office thing.
Yeah, office and yeah, no, that's a great win. Thanks, Carlo. Anybody else?
I can throw one in the loop, I guess.
Yeah.
Not exactly what I'm looking for, but I did have a conversation for an off-market land deal. Again, I'm trying to get into residential. It just kind of came my way as I've been talking to people about what I'm trying to get into in my area. So got some interest. There's a lawyer coming up into town. It's an aging person, family member that's going out, but it's a good chunk of property. It's right in the area that I'm looking to invest in. So fingers crossed, I guess something comes of that one way or the other.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. That's a win.
Get the message out there, I guess.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, that's when you get the message out there. Be able to build your capacity, build your capital raising capacity, and also build your deal flow capacity as well.
Yeah.
So I've gotten off-market deals directly, from other investors that just didn't know how to take them down, and they were free.
For sure. Yeah, just talking to folks at a work event that we had last week, and was like, "Here's what I'm doing," and oh my God, you live in that area? My old man's selling, so that was kind of interesting.
Absolutely. Any other wins, guys? Girls? Okay. We'll see you all next week. I'm actually going to try to have Vlad cover for me next Wednesday, because I'm going to be in Florida. I know some of us have like one-on-ones. I can still do the one-on-ones while I'm down there, but I think that we're going to be going out to dinner next Wednesday night. So Vlad will be having the helm next Wednesday. So we'll see y'all soon.